Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this week's edition of On the Line, being recorded on March 24th, 2025. It is election season. Yay! And with us today, we actually have three guests, members of the Line's anti-panel. So we are going to be trying to shake up the convention of the political panel here at the Line, as we are wont to do. Today, we have Amanda Galbraith, the partner with Oyster Group, and also sort of speaking for Team Conservative. Kim Wright, the principal and founder of Wright Strategy, as speaker for the NDP group, and Jamie Carroll, longtime Liberal hack, and he is self-described as such. So we're going to have each of these guys on the panel to talk about the horizons ahead of us for this year's election. However, we have a bit of a twist on it, and the idea of the anti-panel is that all of these people are either going to have to compliment the other team or trash their own. We're trying to get them out of their partisan headspace. We're going to see how that goes, but I think it's going to be lots of fun, and I think you'll really enjoy it. So thanks for joining us today here on the Line. I'm Jen Gerson for The Line.
This message is brought to you by the Forest Products Association of Canada. Canadian forestry supports 200,000 workers, generates $87 billion in annual revenue, and provides the products we need to build homes and drive economic growth. While trade barriers from the U.S. threaten jobs and investment, Canada's own approval processes and regulations are blocking critical projects that increase our self-reliance. We can and should have programs that expand domestic wood use, advance biomass and pulp market opportunities, and cut red tape and regulatory barriers. The Government of Canada has a clear opportunity to stand up for Canadian forestry at a time of growing global uncertainty. We need real action that puts Canadians first, supporting employees and their families, securing stability for our businesses, and protecting the long-term potential of our sector and its people. To learn more, visit ForestryForTheFuture.ca.
Hello to our anti-panel, and thank you for joining us on this week's edition of On the Line. We have with us here Amanda, Kim, and Jamie, and I'm just going to start off right off the top because the writ dropped yesterday, or the writ was written up on yesterday. No one correct me on that one. And I would like to start by just asking each of you, what are you looking at from your perspective as this election kicks off? What is your team facing? What are the headwinds? What are the advantages? And what kind of milestones or key trigger events are you going to be looking for as the next couple of weeks unroll? And I'm going to start with Amanda simply because she's on my top left-hand corner and I read left to right. So, Amanda, you first.
I knew you were going to start with me because you said that I was in the top earlier. So I was like, all right, I get no time to think of the answer to this question.
None at all. No mercy.
I think, I think I'm happy the campaign is here, first of all. I think it feels like we've been, like someone's been kind of quietly trying to date us for a little while. And I'm like, no, I just want to make the damn decision. So I'm glad that the election is here and we can kind of take the measure of the leaders, which I think is going to be an important part of our conversation today. And also, Canada can get a functioning government federally again. That would be fucking awesome if we could find one of those anytime soon. As far as the challenges, I think, what the Conservatives are after, obviously, the current, whatever the ballot question is going to be firming up in the next few days. Lots of folks think it's going to be about Donald Trump. It very may well be, which I think is an added challenge for the Conservatives because we've been preparing for an election not related to that for the better part of 2 years. So kind of working our way through that and that messaging will be important. I think you saw, at the launch, Pierre sort of not reposition, but certainly I think embrace the Canada First language he's been talking about. Soften a little bit of that. We saw a lot of the kids running around, including in the background of the Avail, which I thought was super cute. And I think how the Conservatives are kind of moving across the country, getting their policy messages out, but also echoing that is going to be really important. And also just combating the excitement around Mark Carney. I was literally watching everything yesterday and thinking like, man, this just reminds me of Kamala Harris in the US. Like, does it ever, with all of the hyperventilating over how amazing he is and the celebrities coming out of the woodwork and the polls going way up. So I think there's some signals and some signs to me that he's going to have some bigger challenges, including how he continues to speak to the media, which if that punches through will be interesting to see. I can also report I had some family members visiting over the weekend who still didn't know who the NDP leader was, Kim. I'm sorry about that, but my mom has now figured out who he is, so that's good. Sorry, Mom, I just outed you on the podcast. So we'll, I think it's going to be interesting. Conservatives are also obviously started off with a huge rally in the Toronto area. I think, 500 people were turned away, 1,000 people lined up, et cetera, which is a good sign for momentum for a campaign. I think a little encouraging. That contrasted to me very interestingly with what Jagmeet Singh was up to, or not Jagmeet Singh, sorry, Mark Carney was up to in Atlantic Canada, and the fact that he locked out those fishermen, not great. I mean, not going to make national news, but certainly I think another signal for his campaign that they need to work those kinks out.
Yeah, speaking of the media, as a longtime member of the media, one thing that entertains me enormously is that all partisans really love it when their leaders shit on the media. It's great.
I don't, for what it's worth. I actually don't at all. It makes my job a lot harder, but I understand why they do it.
It makes your job harder, but it does seem to me that when Pierre Poilievre shits on the media, his partisans just eat it up. They love it. They're like, yeah, screw that Rosie Barton, whatever. And then when Carney gives a hard time to Rosie Barton, it's like, yeah, that Rosie Barton's the worst, says the Liberal media. So it's like, it really is we are equal opportunity punching bags, and I like serving that role in the Canadian political ecosystem. But Kim, I want to move over to you. Can you just give us an overview from the NDP perspective? Like, what are you looking at? What is the race? What does the trudge of doom look like from your perspective right now?
It's not, look, I said this the other day on CBC, nonetheless. The amount of people who continually write the obituary of New Democrats, I laugh about it, because every time this happens for elections, this is the worst ever. I mean, Jack Layton in 2011 was somewhere in that 10-11% range, and then ended up living in Stornoway. So like, things happen on a campaign trail. Sometimes other leaders are crap. And, both Pierre Poilievre and Mark Carney are doing their first campaigns as federal leaders, and they have yet to get their media sea legs under them. They're getting questioned, and boy, the temerity of people to question leaders. Ooh, it's like, I think we will all cringe forevermore of, Rosie, you just need to look inside yourself. Like, come on, be a grown-up politician, for goodness sake. Be a grown-up here. So, and the lectern actually that Jagmeet used yesterday to launch on Sunday to launch his campaign was actually Jack's old lectern. So like, there is some nostalgia with that, but there's also, it took Jack a few tries to get where he got to, and we're excited about that. We've got I think we're closing in on 250 on candidates nominated. And just for listeners, New Democrats actually have to go through nomination processes. They're not appointments and anointments. It's the Democratic part of our name. But it does take a little longer, but we are still ahead of Liberal land in getting our candidates nominated for that. And then Jagmeet started the campaign in Ottawa, then went to Montreal for a really great rally last night. And then off to doing some more housing announcements today, where it is taking federal lands and building 100,000 new homes on those lands. Those are really important issues for people to, in communities across Canada. So I'm excited about it. I will also say, though, if I hear media talk about this being a snap election one more time, like, if there's time to wrap the buses, it's not a snap election. Let's just be very clear about that.
Okay, also, who gives a shit?
We have
Liberals
so few
wrap their
joys
plane,
in our
though,
life.
eh? Sorry.
Yeah, but we have so few joys in our life. Allow us to inject some degree of drama into Canadian politics where we can.
There isn't
Come
enough
on now.
fucking drama in Canadian politics right now.
There's lots of drama, and come on, it's just utter crap. And so I'm a little defensive about it. I also just,
but early,
it's also been it's a minority government.
Poilievre and Singh
we've been all calling for this forever.
For somewhere between 2 years and 2 months.
I welcome the election. I started off saying how happy I am that it's
here. We're not going to fight about semantics. We're not going to fight about semantics here.
Oh, I bet we will.
But the one thing that I will note is, Kim, you made mention of this, but that comment with Carney on Power and Politics, we believe, with Rosie Barton, look into yourself. That was giving me pretty strong Jim Prentice math is hard energy. I don't know if you will recall that.
Math is hard.
because
I do. It's actually one of the turning points of
it was one of the
Rachel
turning
Notley
points
becoming
of the
premier.
Rachel Notley campaign here in Alberta. But one thing that I did note when Carney first launched is, like, the guy gave me Jim Prentice energy. It was credible, respectable dude getting parachuted into party in trouble at the last minute, and who didn't necessarily have his sea legs from under him, as you had mentioned. The other thing that I thought was very interesting, and this is another thing that I wrote about during the midst of the internecine conservative leadership battles, was that the Conservatives had gotten into this habit of, if you don't win your first election, you're out. And that, I think that if that becomes the norm in Canadian politics, that's going to fundamentally change the kind of leaders who wind up getting ahead, because that's a very, very brutal bar to meet. It's much more normal for a leader to lose an election or not do as well as they hoped on their first election and have a couple more kicks at the can and get better at it with time. But Jamie, I want to pivot over to you. Carney, Prentice Energy. What does the campaign look like from your perspective right now?
Sure. Look, a few things. I mean, first of all, I think that last point is absolutely right, that this notion that leaders have one and done is bad for everybody. It's bad for our democracy. It's bad for Parliament. It's bad for the parties themselves. But that's a whole other thing. Look, Carney is unique in a bunch of ways in that, I would have always said no one should be showing up expecting to be prime minister who hasn't been elected to even dog catcher before. Given this incredible confluence of events over the last couple of months, I will admit that I have dropped that pretense and think Carney actually is the right guy to do the job at the moment, and given that incredibly weird environment that we're in. I think the notion there isn't enough drama in Canadian politics at the moment may be the craziest thing I've heard since coffee this morning. That batshit orange pustule syphilitic-ridden half corpse in the White House is making so many countries crazy, but particularly Canada, because geography is destiny, and it's the old, when you sleep next to an elephant, you got to notice when it rolls over. Well, this one's jumping up and down on our fucking heads. So I think it's great that there are other issues that are going to be discussed during the campaign. I think it's particularly great that there is a campaign. But at the end of the day, you're going to have a lot of trouble convincing me that most Canadians are looking for anything other than who can stand up to Donald Trump and who can negotiate with Donald Trump in a world where negotiating with Donald Trump doesn't fucking mean anything, and you're probably going to have to renegotiate or at least have a plan B to get around whatever he just agreed to anyway.
So it's not even negotiation, it's management. It's expectations management.
Right? And I think that's where, look, I came and I had a bunch of nice things to say about Pierre, but the nature of Pierre's personality is perfect for leader of the opposition. I'm not sure that Canadians are going to agree he has the calm, mature demeanor to sit there and rationally deal with somebody like Trump, who is completely fucking irrational almost all of the time, and to simultaneously have a plan for how to crisis manage whatever he doesn't do that he said he was going to do, or vice versa. Right?
Okay, so I just finished that point, and then I just want to say everybody's now got, I think I've given you some space to get your partisan positions on the line. I think that we've recorded them. I want to shift into anti-panel mode now. So
I thought Pierre was hella smart to show up and do his scrum before Carney, right? I think there was a whole bunch of people on my side who were, well, that's rude and that's not respectful. I'm like, nah, that was fucking smart. That was smart, right?
Let's talk. We'll talk about why do you think that was smart?
So I wasn't nuts about what he said. I thought it was a long and rambling soliloquy on a bunch of things that I'm not really sure matter to most people, but the fact that he was there, that he had Parliament in the background, I frankly expected a lot more talk about that. Behind me is Parliament that's been shuttered for the last blah, 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 and didn't really get that. But jumping the gun and showing, no, I'm ready to go. I don't give a shit if you're at the microphone or not. I'm pretty sure he held up Carney's appearance at the microphone by being, I got to turn those off, by being there, ahead of Carney. And it just established, like there's a bit of a mind fuck there of saying, no, I'm the leader of the opposition, but I'm not fucking waiting for you. I'm going to go when I want to go, and, you know, fuck you. And I like that. That's the Pierre as opposition leader that makes a lot of sense to me, right? But can he make that transition, right? I mean, I think he and his team, Jenny particularly, had a very clear view of what this campaign was going to be. And again, to be complimentary, they were too fucking successful, right? They were so good at that campaign that my party did it for them. They got rid of Trudeau and got rid of the carbon tax.
Yeah, and they're now essentially running on the conservative platform, as far as I can tell.
I'm not going to go that far, but
I would.
There's more.
All right, Amanda, I want to pivot to you because
it's too early in the morning for that.
Amanda, I want to pivot over to you because I mean, I'm giving you an opportunity now to either compliment the Liberals or the NDP, or to shit on your own team. You can take that wherever you want to go.
Well, first, thank you, Jamie. That was very kind. I'm going to repay some compliments back to the Liberal Party, but first, I just want to welcome the first progressive conservative leader of the country to run since 1988, probably. So that's Mark Carney. He's here, but actually, I thought
Red Tories are back.
Yeah, that's a compliment. That's a great compliment for me. I'd be considered more of a. Well, I'm not Red Tory anymore, but I'd be more of a centrist conservative. I thought the Mike Myers thing was fucking brilliant. Like, it was a great ad, super smart. I know all the words to Wayne's World still to this day. I didn't know half the shit I will say in that ad, but I know it wasn't at me. I'm a millennial. It was at the boomers, but I thought it was good. It was smart. It continues to me. One thing I think Carney clearly shows well when he's in scripted environments that are like bubble wrapped and protected. And, you know, I think my guess is they're going to continue that strategy as they should, because the minute he's not, and I'm not trying to be, I'm just saying like, that's why the strategy of this makes sense to me. But every time he kind of steps out of there, you just see like the little chippiness, right? Like even I don't know if anybody caught the cue that he got asked about. It was, he said something and a reporter followed up. He didn't answer, right? It was like, blah, 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 blah. And the reporter's like, so I'll take that as a no. And he literally goes back to the mic and goes, you will take them as a thorough and fulsome answer, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, whoa, like that is that's unnecessary, right? But that's just, he's a smart guy. And I think I'm used to that thrust. So to me as a campaigner, I would keep him the hell away from any open mic as much as possible and continue to showcase him in those, because the Canadians will feel like they know him in that way, right? Not everybody's watching every press conference and scrum like the rest of us are.
The energy that actually gave me was this is a dude who's used to being in charge and does not take questions from subordinates.
Yeah,
and
indeed.
Also there was a healthy dose of, don't you know how lucky you are to have me here?
There is a lot of I've come down from on high. I'm not trying to be but literally like the I've come from on high to save you from yourselves. Like even the response on the why. I'm not talking about the Bell's Corners stuff. I could give a fuck about him knowing the map of Ottawa and Nepean. But the tail end of that is like, why did you pick this riding? And the response was, well, it's a medium income of Canadians, and it represents 50-50. I was like, are we in an anthropological study here? Like, what is happening? So I've come down to study you.
He was going to run in Edmonton and then realized that wasn't a sure thing.
That's a bad idea. Also smart move on the Liberal part. So I thought that was good. I think you're smart to call the election as short as you have. Glad you figured out a way to do it in the shorter time span on the 28th and not the 5th. I think bubble wrapping your candidate makes sense. I would do it if I were you. And I'm sure there's more Mike Myers' things that are going to roll out. Like, will the election turn on it? No. But I thought it was a good ad. I think it's at 10 million as of this morning. Views. I mean, I know that's kind of shifty, but like, that's good. Good for you guys. I thought that was smart.
It's quite possible that I'm being too provocative here, but I find that ad really cringy. Not that I disagree with the sentiment of the ad. I agree with the sentiment of the ad, but like the fact that we had to ship someone who now lives in America up to talk to us about being Canadian was like,
yeah. But it also allowed them to lean into the Carney's not been in Canada for that, like he's come back, they're trying to get away from the Michael Ignatieff he didn't come back for you by wrapping himself in with these other expats who've made it abroad and still reference Casey and Finnegan being the best part of CBC ever.
Even though apparently I learned it didn't get to the end of Mr. Like at the very end of Mr. Dress of Casey and Finnegan were nowhere to be found. I will just say, like, we'll hear conservatives and like personally internally, it doesn't piss me off to watch like two rich men who left the country to go make their millions come back and tell us that we should continue to like soldier on in this like shit tough economy where even I have a hard time buying a house. Like, yeah, it fucking makes me mad. But do I think it matters electorally and conservatives were like raising their hands and saying this is out of touch? Like, no, I think most people are going to be like, oh, cool, that's a nice video. That guy looks like a decent fellow. He knows how to do a hockey move or whatever.
In the midst of a rally around the flag effect, I think it's effective. As I said, maybe I'm just too autistic, but I'm struggling to connect with it. Also, has there no love for being Erica and North by North? That's all I'm saying. Anyway.
Look, I think so much of this is, and this is going to become one of the challenges. So everyone got wrapped up in the elbows up and how amazing it was.
That is cringe to me. Elbows up is so cringe. Like I recoil internally.
But it is part of that moment that, you need, I was saying this the other day, that we need as much of we need less doctoral thesis politicians and more Dr. Thugonomics, which is a WWE reference for those as nerdy as I am out in the line land. But the problem is now that this whole elbows up thing has now been co-opted by the Liberal brand. And that becomes really cringe. Not dissimilar to in the Ontario election, Doug and the Canada is not for sale hats, right? Like, I want to wrap myself in the Canadiana, but I'm not stumping for Liberal teams. Like, that's just not a thing that's going to happen. So I think there is going to be there maybe end up being some brand pushback on that. But I did think it was a very effective video. I thought, oh, wow, they're getting in one last Canadiana stand up for Canada thing before the election. And then here's text Liberal. And I'm like, oh, fuck. Now I'm going to be mad about Mike Myers for a while.
But that's a go-to Liberal move, right? Go-to Liberal move is
their entire brand. They literally made their colors the Canadian, like they did it on purpose. And actually, they got away from it in the last decade.
Yeah. Jamie's like going like, yeah, but
you did.
But we're Canada, man. I don't know what to tell you.
My shrug was, yeah, but it fucking works.
No, they literally did it on purpose, and you guys got away from it for a decade because you had the cult of personality around Trudeau. He's gone now. So you've re-embraced the fact that liberal is synonymous with being Canadian.
But what
I find it gross and lengthy.
I have had inside the Liberal Party about which Pantone of red is in fact Liberal red.
Oh, don't get people started on Pantones.
You also need to stop your debate backdrops in all red because it looks like you're coming from like the center of hell. But that's just me. Like that's
okay, guys. I'm gonna let Jamie get the last word here. Then we're gonna go to a quick break.
I didn't even get to throw in one.
The reason why we're gonna do that is because Jamie's got to like leave in 3 minutes. So then it's gonna be an all girls panel. So we're gonna be able to just completely trash the Liberals for like half an hour once he's gone. It's great. But Jamie, I'm gonna let you have the last word before we go into a break, but complimenting the other team or trashing your own, this is your chance, man.
So I did the compliment to Pierre. The only thing I would say about trashing my own team is I don't read Carney's pushback with media quite the same way that y'all do, and maybe that's partisanship, maybe it's not. It may be white male privilege for all I know, but it to me, it's when he feels his integrity is being questioned that he gets snarky, right? Mm-hmm. That pushback with Rosie, which I admit wasn't a good look. It wasn't that he was fighting about the money. It was as soon as she suggested that it's hard to believe there isn't a conflict in his assets that he went snarky. With the Western Standard reporter, it was, first of all, it was the Western Standard, and it was a shit question that was intended to elicit a shit response. I would argue in that circumstance, it's his experience of giving substantive answers is going to take some serious fucking abuse over the next 36 days. And that was just an example of him trying very hard to cling to that against all, good political judgment. So we'll see how that goes. But I think first of all, I think his week as prime minister was incredibly well stage managed, both in terms of what what the government needed to do to be ready for an election, and in terms of getting the party ready for an election. I will, in the spirit of trashing my party, agree that, well, I'll say this. On the trade front, I think Trudeau and company held the fort well, and I think Carney has taken that bit fully from the minute he got the job. But there's a shit ton of other files in government that I would agree have not been getting governed on for 2 or 3 months. And so...
2 or 3 years.
Well, we can fight about that. But, while I think the only question Canadians are really going to ask at the ballot box is Trump, I hope that during the course of the next 36 days, everybody is forced to answer a whole bunch of questions on a whole bunch of other files that aren't going to be deciders, but actually matter to the fucking country. So.
Okay. Now, next time we have you on, Jimmy, you're going to have to stay on for the whole panel, because otherwise this is going to be horrendously unbalanced. And by that, I mean gender imbalanced. It's going to be all women all the time.
That, but leaving the liberal cause behind worries me a bit.
That's true. Well, you know what? We will give you many opportunities. As I said, you are going to be one of our panelists joining us on the Line's anti-panel, I believe weekly. You've committed to, so that's great. And if we wanted, we can also do more of these videos as well, if you guys enjoy it and if our audience enjoys them as well. So on that note, I'm going to put a pin in this. I'm going to say like and subscribe. Check us out at www.readtheline.ca. And when we come back, it's going to be Amanda, Kim, and I just trash talking the Liberals and men in general, because I mean, it's going to be that kind of a vibe.
This message is brought to you by the Métis Nation of Ontario. It's the Upper Great Lakes, the early 1800s. In a crowded trading post, Madeleine Laframboise inspects a bundle of pelts, her keen eyes assessing their worth. Indigenous and European traders stand before her, knowing she gets fair prices and drives a hard bargain. One of the few women to run her own trading empire, Madeleine's influence stretches across the Upper Great Lakes of what would become Ontario and northern Michigan. In a time when the international border did not stop Métis traveling and working throughout the lands they were born upon, Madeleine builds a powerful Métis network through trade, linking Métis families, voyageurs, and traders from Mackinac to Red River. Her nephew, Joseph Laframboise, later moves west where his daughters become matriarchs of several well-known Métis families, such as the Dumonts, who have left an indelible mark on Métis history. As the years pass, young Métis women seek Madeleine's guidance, learning from a woman who defied expectations. Generations later, her legacy lives on in the Métis businesswomen who have become leaders, mentors, and matriarchs today. To learn more, go to OntarioMétisFacts.com.
Okay, so we're back with our anti-panel with Amanda Galbraith and Kim Wright. Galbraith and Kim Wright. See, this is why I'm terrible. I'm sorry. I'm a print reporter. I never learned how to speak good. I never gone down learn how to speak good. But here we go. I want to talk to Amanda for a second here, because I do want to talk about the ballot question. Jamie seems to think that it's going to be on Trump, that the question that voters are going to be asking when they tick their ballots is who is going to be the best equipped to manage all of that down there. And I do think that he's quite correct that right now Carney has something of an advantage on this. My sense is that the Conservatives have been slow to pivot their messaging to address that ballot question because they feel that Pierre can't win it. And I think that is an error I think that's an error. I think that Pierre potentially can win that ballot question if he rises to address it. Do you think that my analysis there is wrong, either on Pierre's ability to, either that being the ballot question, or on Pierre's ability to pivot to meet that ballot question?
I think your analysis is semi-correct. I can't speak to whether or not they think Pierre can. I should say this. I think they think Pierre can win that ballot question, and I think that's why you see the Canada First, the rallies, the wrapping him in the flag stuff too. I think it's easier for him to win a ballot question around affordability. Can he run any other issue? And if you look at the issue set, it speaks to it, right? Like broadly, any other issue is easier thing to win than, hey, like head to head, who's best to deal with Donald Trump? And I think that's the challenge the Conservatives are facing: is do they choose to make try to make the election campaign about other issues, or do they drive headfirst into this Trump thing, or do they do some combination of them both? Which I think they're kind of landing on that last one, is what I'm sensing, because we saw this play out in Ontario, where the Liberal Party and the NDP, campaign on all the other issues that Ontarians said they give a shit about, like affordability, like how, like healthcare, like housing, all those things. At the end of the day, people said, yeah, I feel like those aren't going well, but I still think this guy is the best person to deal with Trump. Now, we were in the midst of a really heated, intense period, and that may or may not, it seems to be sort of calming down a little bit. Obviously, we have April 2nd on the calendar, so I think regardless, that's going to go up. So they're going to pivot into the Trump stuff. So do I think Pierre can win that ballot? I think he actually can, and I think it's a long campaign. Do I know if that's going to be the ballot box question? I think the odds, the betting odds would say yes, it's going to be something around the U.S. But 5 weeks is a really long time in a news cycle, in life, in a campaign, and things may crystallize very differently. I also just think, Kim made the point, both of these leaders are on, like, this is Pierre's first national campaign. You could argue he's kind of been running a semi version of one they've certainly been doing trials over the last year, but it's still a campaign is different. Yeah. This is certainly, I think, the Liberal Mark Carney's very first campaign ever of anything at all, of anything at all. And I think how he runs and how he measures up, and he's got a plane full of media following him around, he can't avoid them, is going to be really, really interesting to see. Obviously, I think Jagmeet, trying to pay my compliment to the NDP here, he's more seasoned to him, right? He kind of gets his stuff a little bit. So I think he'll be a little more comfortable slipping into what this looks like. But they have, I think, some real steep hills to climb here. And I think even inserting themselves into the dialogue for the NDP is a real challenge given their issue set. But so I think anyone predicting the ballot box question at this point would be, a bit over their skis. But yeah, odds on bet is Trump. Do I think Pierre can win that? Absolutely. I think he can. You see some of his aspirational stuff. But it remains to be seen how that stacks up vis-a-vis Carney and others.
Kim, it's very interesting to me when we talk about the ballot question, because it seems to me like Singh has kind of gone a similar route to the Conservatives, ironically, in that he's focusing very much on affordability issues. I don't see Singh sort of presenting himself as I'm the best equipped to take on Donald Trump, and I don't see him making that presentation or that case for himself.
So I think it's a very different approach to how he's taking on Donald Trump. It is very much about how do you support our workers, our communities? Who are you actually in this for? And that is in some ways traditional NDP territory, but it is very much in those communities that are going to be most significantly impacted along borders, Windsors, the Hamiltons, the Sault Ste. Marie's, the, Atlantic, like all of these places are very much in the what are going to be the impacts on workers and communities. And so this is a very interesting tact. It isn't about, is Brookfield's stock prices going to remain high? It is the tangibility of, do the people making furnaces, are they still going to have jobs? Those are going to be the ballot box questions in those communities. I'll also throw, this part in there, and we see this every election. There is a voter efficiency that ends up happening with NDP, especially NDP incumbents, that doesn't get captured in the aggregators. It doesn't get captured in those nationwide horse race polling numbers, many of which are bought and paid for by certain parties, Main Street. But I'm just going to say that because in the Ontario election, while Bonnie Crombie got 30% of the popular vote, and shades of Andrew Scheer, we got the popular vote. You didn't get enough seats. In fact, Bonnie Crombie didn't win a seat for herself, and Marit Stiles is sitting there with 27 seats and leader of the opposition again. So that voter efficiency actually matters, that getting on those doors. It isn't about the big celebrity candidates. And while that is fun for fundraising and some clickbait, those candidates often don't want to go knock on doors, don't want to go talk to people, don't want to do anything more than the rallies and the big splashy interviews. So it is a neighborhood by neighborhood dogfight. We saw this in the last federal election. You look at a place like Nanaimo Ladysmith, which was about 300 votes the NDP won by. That's a rematch that's happening of the NDP candidate and the Conservative candidate. Those are neighborhood by neighborhood battles. And we're really excited about that looks like, because for New Democrats, that's the place we live in. It is the place where you can have, how do you build community? How do you protect the neighborhood, your neighbors, your friends, your family, and not worry about, what it is about the boardroom and the stock prices, where Mark Carney reads like a guy with a briefing binder, that he's got to flip to the quest. We saw this on his launch. For goodness
Why are you
sake,
running here?
What? Flip.
The people of Nepean are
Good,
great.
right.
I'm like, oh no.
Here's the demographics and the dude, like you have, 300 and whatever it is now ridings. You kicked out candidates who were running for whatever or foreign interference.
But he
may or
doesn't
may
know.
not be.
Somebody else makes that decision, even though he's the leader of the damn party. I was like, come on, honey, just park somewhere else.
And let's be really clear, as much as this is Mark Carney's first actual foray into electoral politics, he tried this same crap like 4 years ago or 3 years ago, whenever the last campaign was. He was gonna run in Ottawa Center. Nope. Yasser's gonna be too hard to knock off a nomination meeting, right? Like, if it's not handed to him on a silver platter, ideally engraved with something from, Prince Andrew land, he doesn't really care for it that much. I don't know how he's going to be Dodge and Moose and Kapuskasing or, going to Portage la Prairie, but like, it's going to be weird for him. He's going to look awkward all the way through.
Now, that being said, he can make awkward work for him. That's part of his personal branding.
Except for when he's flipping the briefing book.
Except when he's flipping the briefing book. That's not ideal. So, Kim, the other thing I was going to say is not so long ago, I was making an argument that I thought it very possible that Justin Trudeau would be the dead cat bounce of the Liberal Party, and that the NDP has an opportunity to come up through the left, take over the left. Sorry, excuse me, frog in my throat. become a center left party, and that Canada could move over to a two-party system. And when you saw, especially the age demographic breakdowns of support for the various parties, you can see that future. Like for a very long time, and I think still, the Liberals are the parties of the boomers. And if you're young, you're either split in Conservative or NDP. Yeah. But in the last 3 years, the NDP has absolutely failed to capitalize on the opportunity and failed to capitalize on the moment and failed to become the rallying point for the center left. And now we see Carney come into play. I mean, I don't think anyone would question that Carney's revivified.
He's not going to be really cool with the kids.
No, but potentially, if enough voters are not looking for the hip young thing and are instead just looking for the adult in the room, he becomes a compelling voice. And, it seems to me like the NDP's just squandered this incredible opportunity to eat the Liberals. And it seems like now instead the Liberals are going to eat you. What happened?
Yeah, so I disagree that they've eaten us. I mean, yes, polling, like Carney's got the bounce. I'll give him that. Like, new leaders should get a bounce, especially if you've get 86% in your leadership, right? There is. Yes. As Liberals like to say to me, Kim, we'd be New Democrats, but y'all can't win. And, what I've also seen is places like Manitoba, where the new, like Wab Kinew is just an utter rock star. And, Wab and Jagmeet were hanging out the other day in Ottawa. They're very much, they're friends, they're collaborators, and you're going to see those kind of campaigns in Saskatchewan. Carla Beck, the provincial NDP leader there, really did take it to Scott Moe and picked up a lot of seats that almost picked up a lot of seats that they weren't. They were kind of surprised at the start of the campaign that they were in those columns in the end. Okay, but I think you're going to see more of that in this election, in those ridings. You're not going to see it in the aggregators. You're not going to see it in the polling data, but you're going to see it in those ridings.
But the NDP is not coming into this race with 25 to 30%, which it absolutely could have been.
Yeah, it's Jagmeet Singh. It's Jagmeet Singh, and like Kim can't say it, and they have smart people in the NDP. They're very capable of winning provincially. We've seen them, right? They're competitive. They're winning. It's Jagmeet Singh. Is the leader should not still be there. I know people think he's nice, but I'm not saying Kim thinks this. Kim's never said this to me privately. But
I actually quite like Jagmeet. I think he's incredibly personable. I see him in crowds, and he is fantastic. I also see him with his kids, and you can never see a more devoted natural father than Jagmeet, and I love that for him. And you saw the kids with the orange sunglasses.
I'm sure he's a wonderful person, and he plays great video games, and everybody likes him. But he's been there for a long time, and you guys still haven't You should eat you'd be eating the Liberals for lunch. Like, that is why. To me, it's the leader.
Well, and the other thing I would also point out, you talked about Wab Kinew. I mean, I've said this before. An NDP led by Wab Kinew in the next 5 to 10 years is an NDP that becomes the second party and potentially wins government. I think that is a party that could eat the Liberals.
I think you're going to see some, as always in the NDP campaigns, like there is 2011, Jack was nowhere. Everyone was writing his, okay, I can't say his obituary because that's just awful. Sorry. But the political write-off of the NDP, and then all of a sudden the Orange Wave happened, and everyone was like, who are you? When did that happen?
So, are you making the argument that there's going to be an orange wave this time around?
I'm making the argument that there is some incredible campaigns, incredible candidates, and everyone's going to be a lot more surprised on election night than they're calling for it today. And in places like Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and even in Quebec, there's going to be some really great seats. Halifax, like I'm excited about the campaigns.
We'll pin that, and we'll come back to that in 5 weeks. Amanda, do you have any final words? Because I know you've got to head out, and I think that 45 minutes is probably a really good length for a panel to go of this nature. But do you have any final words? I mean, ideally within the anti-panel conceit, but I mean, I'll take anything snappy you've got, really.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to think of something snappy. I'm excited about the anti-panel. I think it's fun to say nice things about each other, even though I'm trying to what can I say that's nice that won't get me in shit with the Central campaign is sort of where my head's at.
That's okay, Amanda. In the same vein, I know that many Conservatives don't actually like Pierre, and that's probably why a lot of them are staying home. So I'll say it for you.
I actually don't. I think I candidly do think Conservatives have been very excited about the campaign that they've run over the last 2 years.
They're excited about winning potentially.
Sure, for sure, we are for sure. But I think the way he's grown up has been I didn't say that any a link against Jagmeet Singh. I just think the way he's grown into the role has been interesting to see. Similar to watching kind of Harper grow into the role. So I think that'll be interesting to watch. I'm really eyes on, honestly, is not to be, but Mark Carney, watching him run and figuring out how the Liberals continue to keep him all safe and cozy and away from being poked will be a really interesting thing for me to see over the next couple weeks. So we will keep our eyes on that, but maybe it'll be more smart ads from them. And Kim is right. The NDP are great on the ground and are really good in those riding by riding dogfights, and Conservatives know it. So we'll see how that shapes up.
Well, I think it's safe to say that The Line is going to have the most fun political panel. So for anybody who's following us here, I think it's going to be a riot. Thank you very much for joining us. And once again, do check us out, www.readtheline.ca. And thank you guys so much for popping in. We really do appreciate it.
This message is brought to you by Environmental 360 Solutions. Ontario's recycling system is failing local businesses and benefiting large American recyclers. Over $10 million a year is being collected from Ontario consumers in mandatory fees for tire and battery recycling, but much of the work is being outsourced to American recyclers. This is starving local Ontario companies of opportunities to do that work and keep good jobs in the province. Worse, enough mandatory fees have been collected from the consumers to recycle 100% of the materials, but only a fraction of this work is actually being done. Ontario's recycling regulator is finally taking action, issuing penalties to the companies collecting the recycling fees. But in turn, these companies are using these mandatory fees paid by Ontarians to fund recycling programs to cover the fines. The result, Ontario consumers are enriching unscrupulous industry participants and American recyclers, undermining recycling, job creation, and investment in Ontario. It's time for real accountability in the recycling industry. To learn more, go to e360s.ca/fair recycling.